An elderly black woman, dressed simply and modestly, gently stepped into a luxurious restaurant. Her presence immediately contrasted with the glitzy surroundings. Before she could reach a table, Ashley, an experienced waitress, swiftly approached her with a look of suspicion and scrutiny. She spoke coldly, loud enough for the surrounding tables to hear, with a tone of disdain. "Excuse me," Ashley said, her voice dripping with contempt. "Are you sure you're in the right place? This restaurant might be a little beyond your means." Curious and judgmental gazes immediately turned toward the elderly woman. However, what happened next not only left everyone in the restaurant stunned, but also revealed an unexpected truth that would forever change the way they saw life. Lumiere was a famous restaurant in Beverly Hills, long known as a symbol of luxury, class, and prosperity, with meticulously detailed decor that provided the most extravagant dining experience for the elite. The elegant, aristocratic guests were happily enjoying gourmet meals, laughing and chatting with refined manners, creating an atmosphere exclusive to the upper classes. As this perfect scene unfolded like a familiar play, the large glass door gently opened, letting in a chill of the evening air that drifted into the warm interior. The appearance of a newcomer caused many curious eyes to glance around. An elderly black woman in her 70s, small in stature, her silver-white hair neatly tied back at the nape of her neck, entered. She wore an old, simple outfit with a faded gray sweater and a cotton skirt slightly worn at the edges. The light purple scarf she wrapped elegantly around her neck highlighted her healthy, dark skin, and a face that radiated kindness and wisdom, yet bore the marks of time. Her steps were gentle but firm as she moved into the opulent space of Lumiere. Each step was like a quiet note, completely contrasting with the bustle and glamour surrounding her. A few curious guests paused for a moment, their eyes questioning why someone with such a humble appearance would enter a place reserved for the rich and powerful. The elderly woman paused for a brief moment, took a deep breath, and calmly headed toward the reception desk where a young female staff member was standing. Her eyes shimmered with kindness and gentleness, showing no sign of confusion or hesitation, as though she completely belonged in this space. No one noticed, but amidst the luxury of Lumiere, this simple elderly woman was actually the most important figure of the evening. And the surprise about to be revealed would shatter the perceptions of those in the most extravagant restaurant in Beverly Hills. At the reception desk, Ashley Miller, the veteran staff member at Lumiere, quickly noticed the presence of the new guest who had just entered. Ashley was known for her excellent service, always knowing how to please the wealthy customers, but it was also because of this that she harbored deep prejudices about those she deemed unsuitable to be there. Just by looking at a customer's attire or appearance, Ashley felt entitled to judge whether they were worthy of stepping into Lumiere. Ashley's gaze lingered for a long time on the elderly black woman's worn, simple clothing, from her faded sweater to her frayed shoes. To Ashley, every small detail seemed to confirm that the old woman could never afford to pay for even the simplest meal at Lumiere. Her presence was like a smudge on the perfect picture that Ashley prided herself on whenever she looked at her workplace. Ashley furrowed her brows, adjusted the collar of her immaculately ironed white shirt, then slowly walked over to block the elderly woman's path, deliberately creating just enough distance to convey her cold, unwelcoming attitude. "Excuse me." Ashley's voice sounded polite but clearly distant and cold. "I believe you've come to the wrong place. This restaurant may not be suitable for you." The elderly woman gently looked up, her kind eyes still calm, her demeanor unchanged. "I'm not mistaken, dear. I'd like to make a reservation for dinner tonight." Ashley gave a brief, almost mocking smile, poorly concealed behind her perfect makeup. Used to subtly turning away unsuitable guests, She tilted her head and continued in a voice that was overly polite, yet tinged with disdain, just enough for the elderly woman to clearly sense her contempt. "Are you sure you understand what kind of restaurant this is? The prices here aren't like those at the places you might be used to. A dinner here could cost a whole month's salary, ma'am." Ashley purposely raised her voice a little, loud enough for a few nearby guests to hear, and many of them turned to look at the elderly woman with curious, scrutinizing gazes. Ashley felt a small sense of satisfaction, thinking that just a few words like that would be enough to embarrass the woman into quietly walking away. But, contrary to expectations, the elderly woman didn't show any sign of confusion or embarrassment. Her eyes remained calm, her face briefly breaking into a gentle smile of understanding. "I understand that, thank you for the reminder, but I still wish to have dinner here. Could you please check if I have a reservation?" Her overwhelming calmness made Ashley feel uncomfortable. She had never encountered a situation like this. The people she usually turned away would easily feel ashamed and quietly leave, but this elderly woman had no intention of giving up. Ashley reluctantly walked to the computer, pretending to check the reservation list, her fingers moving swiftly over the keyboard, but only going through the motions. After a moment, she looked up, stifling a sigh and shaking her head, her voice tinged with fake regret. "I'm sorry, but I couldn't find any reservation under your name. You must have made a mistake." The elderly woman still stood there, calmly smiling as she responded gently. "Maybe it was a mistake, but I would still like to make a reservation now, if there's availability." Ashley felt clearly challenged. Her face flushed slightly with frustration, but she quickly regained her cold, composed demeanor. Determined not to let the woman step into the luxurious space inside, she replied quickly, "I'm sorry, but our restaurant doesn't accept last-minute reservations like that. It's our general policy." With that, Ashley stood straight, crossed her arms, and her gaze carried an implied message that the elderly woman didn't belong in this place. But what Ashley didn't know was that the elderly woman standing before her was not the poor, insignificant woman she assumed. She had come not to cause trouble, but simply to dine at the restaurant owned by her own son. And this truth would soon force Ashley to face the greatest lesson of her life. Ashley stood there, her posture rigid as if to emphasize her firm rejection. She was confident that with the display she had just made, the elderly woman would surely feel embarrassed and leave quickly. However, what happened next was completely beyond Ashley's expectations. The elderly woman maintained her gentle smile, her eyes soft and kind as she looked at Ashley, as if understanding the discomfort and distaste in the young woman's heart. There was no sign of anger or sadness. Instead, she spoke in a soft, slow voice, as if trying to ease the tension in the air that was building by the second. "My dear, could you please check once more for me? Perhaps my reservation is a little hard to find. The name is Mary Carter." Ashley was taken aback. The elderly woman's voice was so gentle that it made her feel both surprised and uncomfortable, because she had been expecting a completely different reaction: anger, a rebuke, or at least some sign of awkwardness from the elderly woman. But no, she remained polite, calm, and even addressed Ashley in a manner as if she were calling her granddaughter. This attitude left Ashley feeling perplexed. Reluctantly, she returned to the computer, deliberately typing loudly, her fingers pounding on the keys in an impatient manner. But inside, she was beginning to feel uneasy, unable to understand the elderly woman's unusually patient demeanor. Not finding the name Mary Carter immediately, Ashley thought this would be the perfect excuse to turn her down once again. And this time, the elderly woman would surely give up. Ashley looked up, her face feigning exaggerated regret. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but I've checked thoroughly, and there is no Mary Carter in the reservation list for tonight. You might have made a mistake." She said this loudly enough for several guests around them to hear. A few curious eyes turned toward the elderly woman, a mix of curiosity and pity in their gazes. Ashley felt satisfied, thinking that this time the elderly woman would have no choice but to quickly leave the restaurant, avoiding this awkward situation. However, the elderly woman's next reaction took Ashley by surprise once again. Instead of leaving, she remained standing, calmly pulling out an old, small notebook from her bag. She opened it and carefully examined a small page inside, then slowly said, "Maybe there was a little mix-up, but could you help me book a table now? I would be very grateful if you could arrange a comfortable spot for me." At this point, Ashley was truly frustrated. She had never encountered such a persistent and difficult customer. The elderly woman's politeness and patience didn't make Ashley feel any less annoyed. Instead, it made her feel as though she was losing to someone who should have been easy to dismiss. Ashley furrowed her brows, her voice becoming firmer, determined to push the elderly woman out of the perfect space she took pride in. "I already told you, ma'am. We don't accept walk-in reservations. This policy applies to everyone. I think you should find somewhere more suitable." Ashley deliberately emphasized the last words, making sure that anyone listening would clearly notice her intention to diminish the value of the person in front of her. But once again, the elderly woman's face remained calm and unchanged. Her eyes quietly met Ashley's, without accusation or anger, only an unbelievable gentleness. "I understand. Then I will wait here for a little while. If a table becomes available, please let me know." With that, the elderly woman slowly moved to the side and sat down on a small chair near the door. She placed her hands gently on her knees, sitting upright with great patience. No one heard her sigh. No one saw her complain or show any frustration. It was her absolute calm demeanor that only left Ashley feeling more confused. She stood frozen for a long moment, her eyes quickly scanning the small, humble figure and feeling an odd sense of irritation creeping into her heart. Why could someone she considered unworthy remain so composed in the face of her clear disdain? Ashley had no idea that the elderly woman's patience and kindness were actually the beginning of a truth about to be revealed. A truth that would completely change her life and the way she viewed the world around her. Ashley stood at the reception desk, her eyes quickly scanning over the elderly woman who was patiently sitting in a small corner near the door. She felt the woman's calmness as a direct challenge, deeply hurting her pampered ego. Ashley had dealt with many difficult customers, but none had made her feel as frustrated as this. The woman's kindness and excessive patience began to unsettle Ashley, and poisonous thoughts started to invade her mind. Surveying the luxurious space, Ashley quickly devised a plan to teach the elderly woman a lesson, to make it clear that people like her had no place in this perfect world. Just a moment later, Ashley walked over to the elderly woman with a sweet, fake smile, but her voice was so cold it could send chills down one's spine. "Excuse me, ma'am. It looks like I've found a spot for you. It's not the most comfortable, but I hope you won't mind." The elderly woman looked up at Ashley, maintaining her kind, sincere smile, and responded, "Oh, that's perfectly fine. Thank you for taking the time to help me." Ashley's face showed a brief moment of confusion due to the woman's politeness, but she quickly regained her usual cold demeanor and gestured for the elderly woman to follow her. She walked briskly past the pristine white tablecloths where the elegant guests were conversing politely, their soft laughter ringing with each step. Ashley led the woman through the rows of tables in the center of the restaurant, where the large crystal chandeliers glistened, reflecting the shimmering light on glasses of deep red wine and sparkling, polished silverware. The further they moved into the restaurant, the less luxurious the space became. Finally, Ashley stopped in front of a small table near the kitchen door. This spot was far from the glamorous front area, a place no one would want to sit unless forced. The clattering of silverware, the constant coming and going of servers, the noise of pots and pans colliding, all the chaotic sounds of the kitchen echoed out, creating an atmosphere completely opposite to the usual elegance of Lumiere. "Here's your table, ma'am," Ashley said, placing the menu down roughly, making a deliberate noise to draw the attention of a few nearby servers. They exchanged glances, understanding what Ashley was doing, but no one dared speak out. Ashley had long built a strong position at the restaurant, serving VIP guests well and always receiving favoritism from the management. This made those around her hesitant to confront her, even if they disagreed with her disrespectful behavior. The elderly woman slowly sat down, gently placing her old purse beside her, her gaze still warm and kind. She seemed unfazed by the noise and the inconvenient position. Ashley stood there for a few seconds, watching and waiting for some sort of reaction. A frown, a sign of discomfort, or at least a soft complaint. But nothing happened. The woman simply opened the menu and began slowly browsing through the dishes like any other ordinary customer. Her calmness made Ashley feel as though she were hitting air, and all her efforts to make the woman give up seemed pointless. The feeling of failure in her plan to punish the elderly woman only made the young waitress even angrier. Ashley cleared her throat, intentionally speaking louder with an insinuating tone. "If you find the prices too high, you could choose something light or a simple soup." The elderly woman looked up gently, her eyes warm and full of sympathy, as if she were trying to comfort Ashley rather than feeling hurt by the snide remarks. "Thank you, dear. I'll choose something that's appropriate for me." Ashley gritted her teeth and quickly turned away. For the first time, she felt defeated, not by a powerful customer, but by the absurdly gentle and patient demeanor of an elderly woman she had disrespected from the start. From a distance, Ashley still couldn't contain the anger simmering within her. She decided she would make sure the elderly woman faced more difficulties throughout the evening, determined to make her leave before the night was over. Meanwhile, at the small table in the kitchen corner, the elderly woman maintained her incredible calmness. Her kind eyes scanned the small text on the menu, occasionally nodding as if having a quiet conversation with herself. Every now and then, a few young servers walked by, casting sympathetic, pitying glances at her, but no one dared linger, fearing getting involved in trouble. Time passed slowly, and the elderly woman remained still, not showing any signs of discomfort. Her hands gently rested on the table, the wrinkled, calloused fingers lying still as if they were telling the story of all the hardships she had endured in her life. Perhaps it was these struggles that had shaped her patience and deep sense of compassion. From a farther corner, Ashley continued to watch the elderly woman with a frustration she couldn't quite express. She had never met anyone who made her feel so annoyed and irritated. But what she failed to realize was that in her treatment of the elderly woman with contempt and disrespect, she had unknowingly placed herself in a dangerous situation she never anticipated. For the elderly woman, sitting in the dim corner of the restaurant, was not just an ordinary guest. She was the mother of the most powerful man in this place, the owner of Lumiere. A shocking truth was about to be revealed, throwing Ashley into an unexpected predicament and marking the beginning of the greatest lesson of her life. From the far corner of the restaurant, Ashley continued to glance over at the elderly woman, trying to guess what she would do next. Deep down, she was certain that the old woman would soon feel embarrassed or uncomfortable and would quickly find a way to leave. However, as each minute passed, the elderly woman remained seated calmly, as though nothing unusual was happening. This only made Ashley feel more confused and uneasy. Ashley had never encountered a guest so persistent and stubborn. She bit her lower lip slightly, her slender fingers instinctively tightening around the pen she was holding, trying to think of another way to make the old woman feel uncomfortable and force her to leave in disappointment. It wasn't just Ashley's personal discomfort. It was also a way for her to protect what she always believed to be the class and reputation of Lumiere. Ashley convinced herself that she was simply doing the right thing. When she saw the elderly woman fold the menu and place it gently on the table, Ashley immediately approached. She deliberately walked slowly, making each step seem dignified, her head held high, clearly trying to make the old woman feel the superiority that Ashley wanted her to recognize. "Excuse me, ma'am, have you decided what you'd like to order?" Ashley's voice carried a hint of arrogance, as if she was certain the old woman's choice wouldn't matter compared to the luxurious menu here. The elderly woman gently raised her head, her gaze still warm but clear, without a hint of hesitation. A kind smile remained on her lips as she slowly pointed to the menu and spoke softly, but clearly enough for Ashley to hear. "I'll have the filet de Rossini. Please help me with that, dear." The words left Ashley stunned, unable to believe her ears. Filet de Rossini was not just an ordinary dish. It was the most expensive and luxurious item on Lumiere's menu. Made from premium beef combined with rich foie gras and a rare black truffle sauce, this dish was not only famous for its exorbitant price, but also represented the highest level of gourmet cuisine. Ashley had witnessed many wealthy guests without hesitation spending large amounts on this dish, but she never imagined that someone as humble as the old woman would dare to order it. In that moment of confusion, Ashley purposely looked at the elderly woman again, as if trying to find some sign of hesitation or discomfort, but all she saw was a calm, gentle gaze and a light, sincere smile. To the old woman, ordering the most expensive dish here seemed nothing unusual or intimidating. It was this natural demeanor of the elderly woman that made Ashley feel even more lost. An uncomfortable feeling rose within her, and she angrily thought that the old woman must be pretending, trying to make things difficult for her. Ashley bit her lip and tried to stay calm, asking again with a tone deliberately emphasizing, "Are you sure? This dish is the most expensive special on our menu. It's not cheap at all." The elderly woman remained undeterred. She simply nodded gently, politely. "I understand. Thank you for reminding me. Please order it for me." Her unexpected calmness made Ashley feel as though she had lost a bit of control. Not wanting to appear passive, she reluctantly picked up her notepad, forcing a cold smile and replying, "Of course, ma'am. Please have a seat and wait." Ashley turned to walk away, but this time she wasn't in a hurry. She deliberately walked slowly, making sure the elderly woman had to wait a little longer. Passing by a few colleagues, she pretended to check on other customers, pausing briefly to chat idly, all just to drag out the delay. To Ashley, this was her way of showing the old woman the difference, making her feel unwelcome, and eventually forcing her to submit. However, no matter how long Ashley delayed, the elderly woman remained patient, sitting there without showing any sign of discomfort or impatience. Her eyes remained calm, even carrying a hint of joy, as if she didn't mind waiting longer than usual. The elderly woman's attitude only made Ashley more frustrated. She couldn't understand how the woman could maintain such grace and composure in this clearly unfair situation. From a distance, Ashley noticed a few other servers starting to glance toward the elderly woman's table with obvious curiosity. A few exchanged silent looks, then discreetly glanced back at her. It seemed they were beginning to realize that something was wrong, but no one dared to speak up or challenge the way Ashley was handling the situation. Ashley gritted her teeth, deciding to drag out the delay even longer. She wanted the elderly woman to fully understand that she was not welcome here, that Lumiere was only for the truly rich and powerful, and never for those she deemed undeserving. But what Ashley didn't know was that her intentional delay was leading her straight into serious trouble. A truth she had never expected was about to be revealed, pushing her into a situation she had never imagined, and it would become the most valuable lesson of her life, one that shattered her ideal of perfection. From the familiar table located at the center of Lumiere, Henry Thompson quietly observed the entire situation. He was a regular customer, often visiting not only for the excellent food, but also for the refined, classy service the restaurant always strived to provide. Henry was not one to interfere with others' business, but tonight, every action, every cold and deliberate word from Ashley had deeply unsettled him. Henry was a man in his 60s, with a dignified appearance, his hair nearly all gray, but his eyes remained sharp as ever. Many years in the business world had honed his ability to read people's minds, and Ashley's attitude toward the elderly woman could not escape his keen eye. He noticed the elderly woman sitting quietly, patiently, showing no signs of discomfort or anger in response to Ashley's disrespectful behavior. This only heightened Henry's sense of injustice. He knew Ashley. She was a longtime staff member at Lumiere, who had always served him and his associates with a friendly attitude. But tonight, he saw a very different side of her, one he could not accept. Henry gently set down his wine glass, took a deep breath, and looked at his companion, nodding as if to say, "I need to clarify this." Without wasting another second, he stood up, adjusted his jacket carefully, and slowly made his way to the small table where the elderly woman was sitting. Ashley was still chatting idly with another staff member, deliberately dragging out the wait to make things harder for the elderly woman. When Ashley's eyes accidentally met Henry Thompson's approaching figure, her heart suddenly raced, and a sense of unease washed over her. Ashley knew exactly who Henry was, and even more so, she understood that he was one of the most important clients at the restaurant. The unexpected attention from him was something she certainly hadn't anticipated. While Ashley was still anxious, Henry had reached the elderly woman's table. He smiled warmly, gave a polite nod, and gently spoke. "Hello, ma'am. May I sit with you for a moment?" The elderly woman looked up, slightly surprised, but quickly responded with a kind and friendly smile. "Of course. Please sit." Henry gently pulled the chair opposite her and sat down, his gaze sincere with respect, completely genuine. He leaned forward slightly, his voice soft but clear enough for a few nearby people to hear. "My name is Henry Thompson. I dine here often. I couldn't help but notice that you've been waiting quite a while. Is there anything I can do to assist you?" The elderly woman smiled gently, shook her head lightly, and replied, "You're very kind. Thank you so much. I'm fine, truly. There's nothing to worry about. Perhaps the young lady serving me is just a bit busy." Although the woman said this, Henry's eyes briefly flicked to Ashley with a sharpness that clearly showed his disapproval of her deliberate delay. Ashley immediately realized that Henry had seen through her intentions completely, and this caused her real fear. She began to feel that things were slipping out of her control, and the arrogant thoughts she once had now turned into a serious threat. She hurriedly approached the elderly woman's table, forcing a bright smile, though she couldn't hide the clear anxiety in her eyes. "Mr. Thompson, what a surprise to see you here. Can I help with anything?" Henry's tone became firm, still maintaining his usual politeness, but enough to make Ashley feel the weight of his displeasure. "Ashley, I think you know exactly why I'm here. I want to ensure that every customer in this restaurant is treated well and fairly, and I've witnessed this entire situation from the beginning." Ashley felt her cheeks burn with shame and panic. She tried to awkwardly explain, I was just trying to arrange the seating as best as I could, sir." Henry did not let her finish, gently but firmly interrupting her. "The best? I'm afraid seating an elderly guest near the kitchen door while many tables remain open in the main area is hardly the best. It's not just thoughtless, it's disrespectful." Henry's words, though not loud, were heavy enough for those around to hear. A few customers turned to look, their curious eyes adding to Ashley's growing panic. She lowered her head, struggling to contain the emotions rising within her, and meekly responded, "I'm so sorry, I'll fix it right away." Henry smiled gently at the elderly woman, as if to soothe the discomfort she had been subjected to. He then turned to Ashley, his voice calm but resolute. "I hope this doesn't happen again. And remember, the true quality of this restaurant doesn't lie in the expensive food or luxurious decor, but in the way you treat each and every customer." Ashley remained silent, bowing her head, realizing for the first time just how her arrogance and stubbornness had led her into this uncomfortable situation. She understood that her actions had not only damaged the restaurant's reputation but had also put her own career in great jeopardy. What Ashley didn't know was that what had just transpired was only the beginning of a series of surprising events. Henry Thompson's unexpected intervention had opened a crucial turning point, forcing Ashley to face a truth she could never have imagined. A truth that was about to overturn everything she had believed in and taken pride in until now. The moment Henry Thompson finished speaking, the air around the small table where the elderly woman sat became unusually suffocating. Ashley stood silently, her head slightly lowered, but her eyes still fixed on the elderly woman with a touch of anxiety mixed with deep embarrassment. Henry's blunt words made her realize that things had quickly spiraled out of her control. Curious glances and whispered conversations filled the air, all directed toward the elderly woman's table, which only made Ashley feel more pressured and uneasy than ever. Before Ashley could figure out how to respond, the main door of Lumiere suddenly opened again. This time, the entrance of the person who stepped in immediately drew everyone's attention. The man who had entered was dressed in an elegant black suit, tall and imposing, his face serious but radiating confidence. It was none other than Stephen Carter, the owner and the most powerful figure at the restaurant. Ashley froze, her heart racing as she realized Stephen's unexpected arrival. Normally, Stephen never showed up without warning. Every time he visited was a significant event, meticulously prepared in advance. But today, his expression revealed nothing special, only a sharp gaze as he surveyed the entire interior of the restaurant carefully. Stephen Carter slowly walked past each dining table, where regular guests politely nodded in acknowledgement, and he responded with short, courteous nods. When his eyes landed on the small table in the corner where Henry Thompson sat with the elderly woman, his face unexpectedly softened, his eyes filled with surprise and emotion. He walked faster, heading directly toward the elderly woman's table, which made Ashley feel a real sense of panic. As Stephen approached, Henry stood up and shook his hand warmly, but with formality. "Hello, Stephen. It's good to see you again." Stephen smiled friendly, but clearly kept his full attention on the elderly woman sitting across from him. His eyes lit up, his expression warm in an almost strange way. Then, to the astonishment of everyone in the restaurant, Stephen called out to the elderly woman in a gentle, affectionate voice, "Mother, I'm sorry I'm late. You've been waiting for a long time, haven't you?" Stephen's short sentence caused the entire restaurant to fall into such silence that the ticking of the clock on the wall could be heard. All eyes widened in shock, turning toward the elderly woman. Henry Thompson smiled in satisfaction, as if he had already guessed part of the truth behind this. Meanwhile, Ashley stood frozen, her face pale, as though she had just experienced a nightmare. The elderly woman slowly stood up, gently taking Stephen's hands, her voice still kind and full of love as always. "It's okay, dear. I just arrived. You've been so busy, and yet you still made time. I'm so happy." Stephen looked around, seemingly starting to sense that something was wrong with the tense atmosphere surrounding them. His sharp eyes lingered longer as he saw Ashley standing motionless, her face a portrait of panic that could not be hidden. Stephen gently placed his hand on his mother's shoulder, asking softly but seriously, "Mother, is everything okay?" The elderly woman shook her head slightly, as if not wanting to make a scene, but Henry's gaze quickly met Stephen's questioning look. Realizing it was time to clarify the situation, Henry spoke gently. "Stephen, I think your mother is being too modest. In fact, she hasn't been treated properly since she walked into this restaurant. Ashley seems to have misunderstood, and she placed your mother in an uncomfortable position, delaying her order for quite some time." Henry's words were not harsh, but they were clear and direct enough for Stephen to immediately understand the gravity of the situation. He slowly turned, looking directly at Ashley, his gaze cold and stern, making her shiver. Ashley, now fully realizing, understood that the person she had intentionally offended and made uncomfortable was the mother of the owner, the one who directly controlled her career and future. A wave of panic flooded Ashley's body. Her heart was pounding faster than ever, her throat dry, and her mind was spinning, unable to think clearly. All the efforts she had made to build her career, the praise, and the favors she had received from Stephen before, everything now seemed at risk of evaporating in this one brief moment. Stephen didn't raise his voice, didn't yell, but his chilling silence made Ashley feel more pressure and fear than any reprimand ever could. She knew she had just made the most serious mistake of her career, a mistake that not only affected her job, but also taught her a valuable lesson about how she judged and treated people. Meanwhile, whispers of shock began to spread throughout the restaurant. Astonished, confused glances were exchanged between Ashley, the elderly woman, and Stephen, as if they couldn't quite believe what they had just witnessed. Ashley lowered her head, never before feeling so small and out of place in a place she once thought she belonged. What Ashley didn't know was that tonight would become the biggest turning point in her life, a profoundly valuable lesson about respect and humility, values she had unknowingly forgotten in her pursuit of fame. The atmosphere in the restaurant became eerily silent after Stephen Carter addressed the elderly woman as Mom. All eyes turned toward Ashley, making her feel as if she were caught in an invisible whirlwind, each passing second growing heavier and more suffocating. Soft whispers spread throughout the tables, further emphasizing the confusion and embarrassment Ashley was awkwardly trying to hide. Stephen remained standing there, his gaze cold and stern, directed straight at her, a look she had never seen before from the restaurant owner whom Ashley had always respected and feared. Ashley swallowed hard, her trembling hands struggling to keep a firm grip on her notepad, her palms damp with sweat. She had never imagined she would find herself in such an awkward situation. Just a few minutes ago, she had been confident that she was in full control, that she was doing the right thing by upholding Lumiere's standards of luxury and elegance. But now, all that arrogance had vanished, replaced by a deep sense of fear and regret. Stephen gently guided his mother into a chair with great care, his eyes soft as he looked at her. But the moment he turned back to face Ashley, that gaze became sharp and resolute. "Ashley, I think you owe my mother and everyone here an explanation. Can you tell us why you treated my mother with such disrespect?" Stephen's words rang out clearly and heavily, causing the entire staff and customers in the restaurant to fall silent. Every pair of eyes was now on Ashley. Her face turned pale, as if all the blood had drained from it, her lips trembling as she tried to speak. I'm truly sorry, Mr. Carter. I didn't know she was your mother. I had some sort of misunderstanding." Ashley couldn't continue. Her clumsy explanation seemed meaningless and hollow in the face of the truth that had just been revealed. Stephen raised an eyebrow, clearly dissatisfied with her evasive answer. "Misunderstanding. Ashley, you judged a person based on their appearance and age, deciding who deserves respect and who doesn't, and you call that a misunderstanding?" Stephen's harsh words pierced Ashley like sharp knives, making her feel more pained and embarrassed than ever. The surrounding staff all stood in silence, heads bowed, no one daring to speak up for or comfort Ashley at that moment. Ashley herself realized clearly that this wasn't just a simple mistake. This was a failure in the way she had chosen to live and behave. Ashley lowered her head in confusion, her voice now reduced to trembling, faint sounds. "I was wrong. I'm so sorry, ma'am and sir, I don't know what else to say." In that tense moment, the elderly woman gently raised her hand, signaling that she wanted to say something. The silence that followed drew everyone's attention to her. Her face was not angry or accusatory, but instead exuded gentleness and compassion. She looked at Ashley with kind eyes and spoke slowly. "Dear, I don't need an apology. What I wish for isn't for you to be punished or embarrassed, but simply that you think carefully and learn from this. We all make mistakes, but what matters is whether we can recognize them and correct them." The elderly woman's words, filled with kindness, seemed like a soft breeze that eased the tension in the air, calming the pressure and discomfort that everyone in the restaurant was feeling. A few staff members standing nearby exchanged looks, silently admiring the profound forgiveness of the elderly woman. Even Stephen seemed slightly surprised, his gaze softening as he looked at his mother, as if he had just been reminded of a deep lesson in humanity that he, too, sometimes forgets in the busyness of his life. However, Stephen did not completely overlook the situation. He turned back to Ashley, his voice now softer, but still firm and clear. "You see, Ashley, my mother may forgive you, but I hope you understand that what you did today didn't only hurt my mother. It also hurt the very dignity and core values this restaurant has always upheld." Stephen scanned the staff, as if to send a clearer message. "We are servants, and the core value of this job is respect and kindness. We cannot let personal prejudices undermine that." Stephen's words echoed in the quiet space of Lumiere, serving as a reminder not only for Ashley, but also for everyone else present. Ashley lowered her head deeply, filled with embarrassment but also a quiet sense of gratitude for the elderly woman's forgiveness and the opportunity Stephen had just given her to correct her mistake. Stephen ended the conversation with a gentle nod, turning to his mother. "Now, let me find a better seat for you, Mom. Let's enjoy dinner comfortably." As everyone around began to move, Ashley stood there, watching as Stephen helped his mother walk away. She had never realized so clearly that the true value of a person wasn't in their appearance or status, but in their kindness and respect for others, a lesson she knew. From that moment on, she would never forget. As soon as the incident was over, The atmosphere in Lumiere restaurant became heavier than ever before. Ashley stood silently in her place, watching as people slowly returned to their work, but the gazes directed at her were filled with judgment and pity. After escorting his mother to a better position, Stephen Carter immediately returned, walking slowly but decisively toward the meeting room, his serious eyes signaling for all staff to gather there quickly. The atmosphere in the meeting room was as tense as a string about to snap. The employees exchanged nervous glances as Stephen entered, standing before them with an unusually stern expression. Ashley lowered her head more than everyone else, her hands icy cold from the tension, her heart pounding with each beat, knowing she was facing the heaviest consequence she had encountered in her many years of service here. Stephen remained silent for a long time, letting the stillness sink deep into the minds of those present, before slowly speaking in a deep, serious tone. I want you all to understand that this meeting is not just about criticizing any individual. This is an opportunity for all of us to reflect on the values that Lumiere has always upheld. We serve people, and the core value of this restaurant has always been respect. Stephen's gaze locked onto Ashley, firm and unyielding, yet carrying the sternness of a leader who was about to impart a profound lesson. Today, one of our longest-serving employees, Ashley, has made a serious mistake. A mistake that forces us to ask ourselves, what is truly happening here? Have we become too focused on outward appearances, social status, and forgotten that every customer deserves to be treated with kindness, regardless of who they are or how they look? Ashley felt each word Stephen spoke cut deeply into her heart. She knew he wasn't just reprimanding her directly, but also reminding every staff member in the restaurant. Stephen continued, his voice softening now, as if trying to awaken everyone. We don't just serve expensive food, we serve kindness, respect, and an experience that makes anyone who steps into Lumiere feel welcomed and valued. If we lose that, we lose ourselves. The room fell silent again, as everyone sank into their own thoughts. A few people lowered their heads, their faces showing clear shame, knowing that they too had once thought like Ashley. But only Ashley felt the weight pressing down on her shoulders the most. She knew it was time to speak up, to admit her mistake, so that her colleagues would not make the same error she had made today. Slowly, Ashley stood up, her legs trembling slightly, but her voice was unexpectedly clear. She no longer tried to justify herself, nor did she avoid taking responsibility. For the first time in her life, she faced her mistake honestly before everyone. I want to apologize to everyone. I made a huge mistake, not only hurting Mrs. Carter but also damaging the reputation and values of Lumiere. I judged people based on their appearance, age, and social status without realizing that those things never truly reflect the true worth of a person. Ashley paused for a moment, steadying her breath, then continued with a stronger, steadier voice. I was arrogant and presumptuous, giving myself the right to judge who deserved kindness and who did not. But the truth is, every customer who steps into Lumiere, whether rich or poor, young or old, elegant or humble, deserves the same respect. I understand my mistake and vow never to repeat it again. Ashley's sincere and decisive words echoed throughout the meeting room, easing some of the tension. A few colleagues looked at her with less harshness now, replaced by sympathy and encouragement, because at least she had the courage to face her mistake. Stephen nodded slightly, satisfied, his gaze softening, showing that he had recognized the sincerity in Ashley's words. He concluded in a calm but still serious tone, I hope this will be a lesson for all of us. Always remember that Lumiere's success is not just based on reputation or opulence, but on how we treat every individual. No one has the right to belittle or disregard another person. I hope everyone will remember this." The urgent meeting ended in a quiet but heavy silence. As each employee left the meeting room, Ashley stood there for a while, her heart feeling much lighter after being freed from the burden of deception and arrogance she had carried. For the first time in many years, Ashley clearly understood that the most important thing in her job was not the big bonuses or empty praise, but the genuine respect she showed to everyone. Leaving the meeting room, Ashley knew she still had a long journey ahead to mend the damage she had caused, but at least from that day on, she was certain about the right path she needed to take, the path of humility, respect, and true kindness. After the meeting ended, the employees slowly left the room, leaving behind a quiet space filled with reflection. Stephen stayed behind for a while, his gaze distant as he seemed to be pondering what had just happened. He sighed softly, his shoulders carrying a slight weight as he stood up and walked out of the meeting room. The soft lights in the restaurant had become warmer, but Stephen still felt a heaviness in his heart from the incident earlier. From a distance, he saw his mother sitting at a table near the window, her gentle gaze directed outside at the busy streetlights. Her simple, modest demeanor, filled with calmness, made Stephen's heart feel a little lighter. He walked over, gently placing his hand on her shoulder with affection. "Mom, I'm truly sorry for today. I never imagined that you would have to endure something like that at my own restaurant." The elderly woman turned to him gently, placing her weathered but warm hand on his. Her eyes still shone with a peaceful smile. "My son, you don't need to feel guilty. I'm not angry, truly. What happened today, I just hope you and everyone can learn something valuable from it." Stephen sat down beside her, pausing for a moment before speaking softly, his voice filled with concern. "Are you really not angry? You've always taught me that everyone deserves respect. But today, you were the one who suffered from disrespect at a place I've always been proud of." The elderly woman gently shook her head, her eyes looking deeply into his with the kindness and wisdom of someone who had lived through many ups and downs in life. "Stephen, I've been through enough hardships and unfair treatment in this life. Those things can no longer hurt or anger me. What worries me, though, is that young people like Ashley today have lost the kindness in their hearts. If I were to get angry or make a scene, do you think that would help her understand and change?" As Stephen listened to his mother, his heart began to calm. Her gentle yet profound words made him realize that his mother always understood people better than anyone else. He nodded softly and responded quietly, "You're right, Mom. But I just wish things like this would never happen again. Sometimes I wonder if I've become too focused on the image and reputation of the restaurant, forgetting the core values you've always taught me." The elderly woman gently patted Stephen's hand, her eyes filled with kindness but also seriousness as she spoke. "My son, success and fame are both good things, but never let them overshadow what is most precious: kindness. Kindness is the most valuable thing in the world. It doesn't lie in expensive food or the lavish appearance of this place. It's in how we treat each other, in how we recognize and appreciate every person we meet in life." Stephen felt his heart stir with awakening at his mother's deep reminder. He realized that, amidst the busy and pressurized life of running the restaurant, he had sometimes forgotten the most basic things his mother had always taught him since he was young. He looked at his mother with gratitude in his eyes and softly replied, "Mom, you've given me a great lesson today. Actually, I've always known that a person's worth isn't in their appearance, age, or social status, but sometimes I forget that in everyday life. The true value of a person lies in their character and how they treat others." The elderly woman smiled gently, her eyes not only filled with joy, but also a deep sense of pride as she saw that her son had truly understood the lesson she had always hoped he would remember. That's right, Stephen. And I believe that if you always remember this, Lumiere will always be a place to be proud of, not because it's luxurious and grand, but because it's a place where people can feel true respect and kindness. Stephen sat in silence for a long while, his gaze filled with affection for his mother. He realized that today, amidst the troubles and pressures, his mother had given him something far more valuable than all the material things he had created. It was a deep and sincere message about the true value of life. He stood up, gently helping his mother from the table, and spoke with determination and sincerity in his voice. I promise you, Mom, from today on, Lumiere won't just be a place serving expensive food or welcoming the rich. It will be a place where everyone is welcomed with genuine respect and true kindness. That will be my way of showing gratitude and respect to you. The elderly woman smiled softly, patting her son's hand, as if to say that she completely trusted him. As they walked out of the restaurant, the soft golden light from behind seemed to blend with their simple, calm figures. A profound and sincere lesson had been gently but powerfully passed on, not just to Stephen and his employees, but to everyone who had witnessed what happened that day. And more than anything, it was the clearest affirmation of the most important thing each person needs to remember in their life, that kindness, respect, and character are truly what give eternal value to every individual. After the tense meeting and heartfelt words exchanged between Stephen and his mother, Ashley returned home with a heavy heart. Throughout the short drive from the restaurant to her small apartment, every word and look from the elderly woman kept replaying in her mind. Never had Ashley felt so clearly the deep mistakes she had made. It wasn't just the fear of losing her job or the blow to her self-esteem in front of the other staff, but a deep awakening from within her soul about the way she had viewed and treated those around her. In the quiet room, Ashley sat still by the window, gazing down at the people walking under the late streetlights. The memory of the old woman's kind, gentle eyes made her realize how wrong she had been to judge people by their appearance and social status. Over the years, she had let her biases and arrogance control her without even realizing it. It had been a silent poison, slowly seeping into the way she lived and worked, turning her cold and indifferent to the true feelings of others. Ashley quietly remembered her early days as a waitress when she first stepped into Lumiere with a pure heart full of enthusiasm. Back then, she served every guest with sincere dedication, never discriminating based on wealth or status. But over time, as her career progressed, she began to forget those basic values. Unconsciously, she built artificial standards, believing that only wealthy and powerful guests deserved her respect. As the night gradually fell, Ashley sat alone in the darkness of her small room, the first time seriously asking herself, what kind of person had she become? Could she return to being the sincere, kind-hearted girl she once was? And Ashley knew that the only answer was that she had to start changing immediately. This wasn't just about her job at Lumiere, but about her dignity and the true peace she had always longed for in life. The next morning, as the gentle dawn broke, Ashley returned to Lumiere earlier than usual. Unlike every other day, today she stepped into the familiar space with an entirely new feeling. She began her workday with a sincere greeting to her colleagues, no longer displaying the arrogance and aloofness she once had. Many staff members were initially taken aback by this change, but when they met her earnest gaze and heard her genuine voice, they quickly smiled and responded with warmth and understanding. From that moment on, Ashley seemed to become a completely different person. She proactively took on tasks to serve tables she used to avoid, tables she once considered less important. For the first time in years, Ashley realized how many simple joys in her work she had missed. She began to listen, observe, and take better care of each guest with more sincerity. Every time she approached a table, Ashley would look into the eyes of each guest, trying to sense and fulfill even their smallest desires. One time, an elderly man wearing a worn-out coat with frayed shoulders entered Lumiere, clearly not fitting the usual type of guest the restaurant catered to. But this time, instead of making a quick judgment based on his appearance like before, Ashley gently smiled and approached him. She kindly guided him to a comfortable table, asked about his culinary preferences, and offered thoughtful recommendations. His surprise quickly turned into a smile, and he relaxed much more. Witnessing these actions, Ashley's colleagues began to notice the genuine change in her. They started to look at her with more respect, not because of her long tenure or the reputation she had built, but because of the sincerity and humility she now displayed every day. Even Stephen Carter, the restaurant owner, quietly observed from a distance, noticing the positive progress Ashley was making in her efforts to correct past mistakes. There were days when Ashley still found herself struggling with old biases deep in her mind. But whenever that happened, she would always remember the kind eyes of the elderly woman and her soft but powerful words. Kindness is the most valuable thing in life. It was this precious lesson that became her guiding light, giving her the strength to persevere through the difficult but necessary change. Gradually, Ashley felt her soul lighter than ever. The job of serving, which once brought her so much stress and pressure, had now become a simple joy every day. She understood more than anyone that she wasn't just serving good food. She was offering her guests a sense of respect, a warm welcome, and sincere treatment. Ashley realized that the journey to correct her mistakes would not always be easy, but she knew she was on the right path. From the bottom of her heart, she felt deeply grateful for the valuable lesson the elderly woman had imparted to her, and for the stern yet compassionate guidance Stephen Carter had given her. Ashley smiled softly, her heart full of hope. She believed that, though the road ahead was long and full of challenges, as long as she kept kindness and humility in her heart, she would surely find her way back to herself and become a person truly worthy of the beautiful values that Lumiere always upheld. Time passed gently like a calm stream, and each day at Lumiere brought Ashley new experiences about the true value of serving others. Over the past week, she had gradually proven that her promise of change was not just empty words or a fleeting regret, but a true determination, a sincere commitment from the bottom of her heart. That Saturday evening, as the restaurant began to get busier than usual, Ashley was hustling to serve the tables with an attention to detail and dedication that she had never shown before. While moving between tables, Ashley's eyes briefly glanced toward the entrance, and she suddenly stopped. Her heart fluttered lightly when she recognized the familiar figure of the elderly woman slowly stepping inside. Unlike the first time, when she was unsure and awkward, this time Ashley hesitated not at all. She immediately walked over, offering a sincere, warm smile, her eyes shining with genuine joy at seeing the elderly woman again. "Good evening, ma'am. It's so lovely to see you back at our restaurant today. Can I help you find a comfortable spot?" The elderly woman looked at Ashley with a fond gaze, slightly surprised, but also with a clear sense of satisfaction on her gentle face. She smiled softly and replied, "Thank you, dear. I'm so glad to see you today. Please choose the most comfortable spot for me." Ashley gently led the elderly woman to a beautiful table near the window, where the soft golden light reflected gently on the clear glassware. Every small gesture of Ashley now radiated true care and thoughtfulness, completely different from the first time the elderly woman had come to the restaurant. Ashley carefully pulled the chair out for her, gently helped her take off her old coat, and then kindly handed her the menu with a polite and friendly attitude that was unlike before. "Would you like to try something special today, ma'am? Or would you like me to recommend a few of our best dishes?" The elderly woman looked at Ashley with a loving gaze, smiled warmly, and replied in a gentle voice, "Please recommend a few special dishes, dear. I'll follow your suggestions today." Ashley smiled happily, gently introducing each dish with enthusiasm, without showing any impatience or reluctance as before. She took the time to listen carefully to the elderly woman's preferences, diligently noting every little detail to ensure she would have a delicious and comfortable meal. From afar, Stephen Carter silently observed all of this. He stood hidden behind the service counter, his eyes intently watching Ashley with a growing sense of satisfaction. Over the past week, he had been closely monitoring Ashley, but it was only today that he truly realized that the young woman who had once been full of prejudice and arrogance had changed in an astonishing way. She not only showed humility and attentiveness, but more importantly, she demonstrated sincerity and kindness that came from the heart. As Ashley busily prepared the dishes the elderly woman had chosen, Stephen approached her, his voice gentle, filled with recognition and encouragement. "Ashley, I want to say you've done a great job today. I can truly see the positive change in you, and that makes me very pleased." Ashley was momentarily startled, then turned to him, her eyes sparkling with joy and emotion as she heard the sincere words from her boss. She bowed her head slightly and responded in a humble voice but full of determination. "Thank you so much, Mr. Carter. I know I made a big mistake before, but I truly want to make it right. I've realized that respect and sincerity are the most important qualities I need to have in this job." Stephen nodded quietly, his eyes shining with genuine joy and pride. "I'm happy to hear you say that. Remember, no one in this world is perfect. What matters most is that we know how to change and become better. And today, you've proven that you can really do that." Ashley felt her heart lift, as if a heavy burden had been lifted off her shoulders. Stephen's heartfelt words were a strong form of recognition, giving her the strength to continue her journey of correcting mistakes and improving herself. Returning to the elderly woman's table, Ashley served each dish with care and dedication, always paying attention to every expression, every small gesture, to ensure the woman felt completely satisfied and comfortable. When the meal ended, the elderly woman gently took Ashley's hand with affection, her voice warm and soft. "Dear, I'm so glad to see that you have really changed today. I know it wasn't easy, but you've done so well. The most important thing is that you now understand the true value of kindness." Ashley felt deeply moved by these words, her eyes brimming with tears. She smiled sincerely, bowing her head in response. "Thank you so much, ma'am. It's because of you that I realized this. I promise I'll never forget this valuable lesson." The elderly woman smiled gently, her eyes filled with trust as she watched Ashley continue on the path she had just rediscovered. At that moment, Ashley's heart was filled with sincere gratitude and a simple but profound happiness. That night, as she left the restaurant, Ashley walked down the quiet street, the soft golden lights gently illuminating each step she took. For the first time in many years, she felt a true peace in her soul, no longer burdened by selfish worries or outdated prejudices. She knew her journey of change had only just begun, but she was ready to face any challenge ahead with humility and kindness, those true values that give life its meaning. As the soft golden light of Lumiere restaurant gently closed behind the mother and son, the elderly woman, arm in arm with Stephen, stepped out onto the quiet street. The peaceful stillness of the late hour made their conversation even more intimate and meaningful. The night breeze carried a hint of cold, but her heart felt unusually warm as she reflected on the events of the evening. The elderly woman paused for a moment, gently gazing up at the night sky. The distant stars seemed to twinkle softly, silently witnessing the changes of humankind below. Her voice was soft but filled with deep thought as she turned to ask her son, "Stephen, do you think people can really change? After what happened tonight, do you think that girl, Ashley, can completely become a different person?" Stephen was silent for a moment before responding to her profound question. His gaze reflected a quiet contemplation, as he knew his mother wasn't just asking about Ashley. It was a question that everyone asks themselves at least once in their life, whether a person's true nature can change completely, or if it's all temporary, just fleeting regrets that eventually revert to their original state. Stephen gently took his mother's weathered hand, his voice slow and sincere as he spoke. "Mom, I think not everyone can change. Real change requires something very special, a true awakening from deep within the heart. But the most important thing is that we can begin change with one person, one step at a time. We may not be able to change the whole world immediately, but if one person changes, it can still make life better." The elderly woman listened quietly to her son's words, her gaze gentle and kind, as if she had just found the answer she had been waiting for her entire life. She nodded slowly and responded with a tone full of contentment. "You're right, Stephen. Sometimes we focus too much on grand things, forgetting that the smallest changes, the tiniest shifts, can carry deep meaning. Today, I witnessed that girl go from being self-satisfied and arrogant to someone who learned humility, thoughtfulness, and respect for others. That's already a tremendous change." Stephen smiled, feeling a deep sense of peace in his mother's gaze. More than anyone, he understood that the gentle woman standing beside him had endured countless storms in her life, having witnessed selfishness, prejudice, and injustice in many forms. Yet, he had never seen her lose faith in the goodness of people or their ability to change. She always believed that within every person, no matter how flawed, there exists a seed of goodness, just waiting for the right moment to sprout and grow. The elderly woman looked back at the Lumiere restaurant once more, now bathed in soft, peaceful light. A gentle smile appeared on her lips as she continued speaking to her son. "Stephen, I believe today's story isn't just a lesson for Ashley. It's a reminder for all of us, including you and me. Each of us has made mistakes at least once, whether unintentionally or knowingly hurt others due to our prejudices or selfishness. But the most important thing is whether we have the courage to recognize and correct those mistakes." Stephen nodded slowly, deeply moved by his mother's words. His heart was filled with gratitude, not only because his mother had helped him discover the true meaning of business and life, but because she had taught him how to forgive and see others with kindness and understanding. The elderly woman gently squeezed Stephen's hand tighter as they walked slowly down the street, the yellow streetlights blending with their peaceful steps. Once again, her voice rose, gentle and full of hope. "I believe that each of us can change, even if just a little, Stephen. Always remember that kindness and understanding will always be the key to unlocking true happiness for people. As long as we love, respect, and remain patient, good things will naturally come." Stephen looked at his mother, feeling his heart swell with emotion. He realized that the lesson in kindness his mother had just shared wasn't just for Ashley. It was a heartfelt message for him as well, and for everyone trying to live a better life each day. "I understand, Mom, and I promise, Lumiere will always be a place where everyone who comes here feels genuine respect, kindness, and love. That will be the way I spread the valuable lesson you taught me today." The elderly woman smiled gently, her eyes shining with joy and deep faith in the future. The two of them continued walking quietly, blending into the silent crowd under the starry night sky. They understood that good values are never too late to learn, and real change always starts with the smallest things, from each heart, from each person. As the shadows of the elderly woman and her child blended into the crowd under the streetlights, the Lumiere restaurant behind them continued to radiate a soft glow, as if to remind everyone that each person deserves respect and kindness, regardless of who they are or how they appear. This was the deepest message, not just for Ashley, Stephen, or the other staff at the restaurant, but for everyone who witnessed today's story. Life is full of prejudice. We unconsciously set standards and barriers, easily judging others based on their appearance, age, status, or ethnicity. Ashley, once a veteran and highly regarded staff member at Lumiere, had made that mistake. She once believed that a person's worth was only reflected by their luxury items, glamorous appearance, or social status. But through this unexpected and profound event, she realized that prejudice is what prevents people from seeing each other's true value. The mistake Ashley made is a common one in modern society. We are not perfect, and none of us are free from moments when we unintentionally or deliberately hurt others due to ignorance or personal biases. But the most important thing is how we face those mistakes. Not everyone has the courage and humility to admit their wrongdoings, to look deep into their hearts and change. But Ashley did. She recognized her error and made a strong effort to change. Through this story, we learn one important thing. A person's value can never be defined by their flashy appearance, age, or ethnicity. An elderly, simple woman like the one we saw can indeed be a person worthy of respect, holding far deeper human values than any other luxurious guest. It was this elderly woman, with her kindness and compassion, who brought the greatest lesson to all those present in the restaurant that day. Lumiere, with its signature soft golden light, would now be not just a symbol of luxury and opulence, but also a place where everyone could feel the sincerity and kindness from the hearts of the staff. Stephen Carter understood this, and was determined that Lumiere would be a special place, not only for its external beauty, but also for the profound values it would always carry within. Today's story is not merely about an individual's mistake and repentance. It is a clear message about the human capacity for change. We all make mistakes, but the important thing is whether we have the courage to recognize those mistakes and whether we are willing to change to become better. The truth is, one person may not be able to change the world, but when each person changes themselves, the world around us will undoubtedly become much brighter. The elderly woman, through her life experience and wisdom, left behind a valuable lesson far greater than any material wealth. Kindness and compassion will always be the highest standards for measuring the true value of a person in modern society. It is not money, power, or social status, but a kind heart and respect for others that defines a person's character. As Ashley walked under the soft streetlights that night, she was no longer just a waitress at a luxury restaurant. She had become someone who knew how to look at herself, accept her mistakes, and have the courage to change. This transformation not only brought happiness and peace to Ashley herself, but also helped spread a profound and positive message to everyone she encountered. We cannot change the world if selfishness and prejudice still reside in our hearts. But if we can start with the smallest change within ourselves, we will surely become a gentle light for others, inspiring positive changes. The story of Ashley, the elderly woman, and Stephen Carter today is a vivid and clear testament to this. It confirms that everyone can change, everyone deserves to be valued, and no one has the right to judge another's worth based on their appearance or any prejudice. And above all, This story serves as a gentle but profound reminder. Always keep kindness and compassion, for that is the most precious gift we can offer each other. Kindness never goes out of style, sincerity is never forgotten, and the true value of every person is always measured by how they treat those around them. When the last lights went out at Lumiere, the story gently closed but opened a new chapter full of hope. A new chapter where everyone understood that the true value of life does not lie in appearance, race, or age, but in the kind and compassionate hearts within each of us. This story is not just a reminder about how we treat each other in life, but also a deep lesson about the true value of kindness and respect. Everyone has had moments when they unintentionally judged others based on appearance, age, or social status, but what matters most is our ability to recognize and change that. How about you? Have you ever witnessed or experienced a situation where you or someone else was treated unfairly because of their appearance, age, or ethnicity? Please share your thoughts and stories in the comments below. And if you find this story truly meaningful, don't forget to like and share the video with your friends and family to help spread this valuable message. Subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on the next meaningful story. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.